it wouldn't be a big surprise to see us kind of going back to those days where people used to have they look like a Western movie. They had the two holsters, their personal phone, and then they had their BlackBerry on the other side.
Yeah.
So we're more than halfway through 2021. We're deep into the pandemic, over a year and a half in, and a lot of businesses have made changes. They've had to pivot. And one of the biggest changes that a lot of businesses have made is going remote. So some businesses have already done that. Other businesses are deciding whether or not to go remote. So that is the subject of our podcast today. If you have gone remote or you're thinking about going remote, did you think of, and then there's a whole long list of items to follow that. So from the IT perspective, when you go remote, or if you're thinking of going remote, Travis, we're lining it up for you to just swing away. What are some of the things that businesses need to think of when going remote?
Sure, yeah. So there were some horror stories that came out of the early pandemic that you could read about on Reddit, different forums that MSPs frequent, like the /MSP subreddit, or just a couple different places throughout the internet, where some folks just said to their employees, grab your desktop computers and take them home. And so we had whole companies that, people were just cannibalizing their hardware, bringing home. Of course, none of it worked as soon as they got home, because that's not how that works. It was a horrible idea. They didn't talk to their information technology staff. I guarantee you, if that's what they just decided to do. If they had an MSP, they didn't call them. So first question was, did you think about how your employees are going to access your corporate information, your data, and your software from remote? Did you think about that? Can they use their home computer? Is that actually a reasonable answer? Do they need to be issued corporate devices? Do you need to get everybody laptops? Are they going to be doing their work on their phones? So the first thing, how are they going to do their job? What do they need to get that job done? And with us, when we saw, because we were watching things in the news and we saw what was happening in different parts of the world. And so we made an announcement to our customers. We sent out an email and said, hey, it looks like we're going to have lockdowns and some things are going to change here. So here's some things we would like you to consider. And we sent that out ahead of time to let our customers try to take some action on it and get ahead of it. Unfortunately, none of them did. Not a single customer took our advice and acted on it. And I just think it was because most people didn't believe it was going to happen. They just really didn't think it was going to be a thing. But yeah, so number one, how are you going to work? Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, it's a pretty important question, huh? Because, if you're homesick, you got to sort through a couple of emails. That's one thing. But when you're not coming back to the office for weeks at a time, it's like, hey, what's on my computer at work? What's on my computer at home? And one of the things I remember you bringing up in one of our discussions is, are you sharing the computer with anyone? Are your kids hopping on the computer afterwards? There's a lot of things that, a lot of people don't consider. I know I myself, until talking to you about this, some of the things that you're mentioning were completely over my head, but make plenty of sense. One of the things you mentioned was VPN. Now, why is that something that businesses might want to consider?
You've got machines, computers, laptops, even phones that are allowed to connect back to your corporate network as if they were in the building, but they're not, right? They're at your house, or they're at a coffee shop or a hotel or wherever you happen to be, but they're connecting in such a way that it appears logically as if they were in the building on the network with the rest of the devices. So that may be necessary for you to access certain files or certain services in your corporate network, because maybe your IT staff has set things up in a secure manner so that you can't access those things from remote. You can only access them if you're in the building. And so now if you're not in the building, but you still need to access them. One of the ways to accomplish that is to create what's called a virtual private network. VPNs also serve another function, right? They don't necessarily just connect you to local resources. They can also be used to channel your traffic through the corporate firewalls, right? And then when you're getting on the internet, it looks as if you're getting on the internet from the company, from the corporate location. And this might be done for a multitude of reasons. One of them might be security. Another one might be that they want to make sure that they've got you working through some sort of filter that they've put in place on their network while you're doing work for them. There's a whole host of different reasons why that might be important. But yeah, do you have VPNs? Are you going to need VPNs? If so, do you have the means to support, the 10, 20, 30, 100 VPNs you intend to deploy? And then once you do that, there's a lot of overhead. If you've set up, 50, 60 people with VPNs, there's going to be support that goes along with that. So this is a big consideration. Do you need them? Do you have them? Do they work? Have you tested them? If not, you gotta start answering those questions and get ahead of it.
I transitioned to working at home. It's something I had done quite a bit before. So my situation was a little different than others, but so I was used to it, and I did a lot of contract work as well. So I used my own computer. But with some people, maybe they have this really nice setup at their house, their home computer, whenever they need to get some things done. Now you introduce a work computer there. It's like, you got to move all this stuff around. You got to change things up. That if they're storing, for example, if they have private information that they need to access, customer information they need to access, why is it not just a good excuse for someone to say, hey, I have a great setup at home. I don't need to take my computer from work. I can just use my computer at home. It's already set up.
It depends. It can be. You maybe using your home computer is acceptable. It depends on what you're doing with it. If the majority of the information you need to access is on a website and you're just logging into a portal somewhere and working through that portal, then the risks of you using your own equipment are reduced. They're not zero, but they're reduced. Okay. In that the device itself isn't like on the network, like a VPN, right? It's not actually physically connected to the network. And maybe what you're doing is you're just using Microsoft 365 and reading emails. So, maybe that's going to be okay for some folks, but there are major considerations that people aren't thinking about when you do that. Even if it is just all through web apps, are you accessing information that you wouldn't want your competitor to have, or that you wouldn't want to have out on the web at large? Is there anything at all that you're accessing that's sensitive? Because if there is, anybody else with access to your computer can have potentially access to that information as well. And with corporate computers, we do a lot to try to, prevent unauthorized access to those machines, to make sure that the only person who's able to actually get on that computer is you. And we're doing a lot with like endpoint detection, antivirus software and anti-spyware software, and a lot of other controls that we're putting in place to make sure that nothing nefarious is happening on that computer or from that computer. We're not doing that on your home computer. We're not installing our antivirus suite or our endpoint detection and response suite on your computer. We're not monitoring its behavior. So if you've got a remote access Trojan, a backdoor, a keylogger, a kid in your house getting on it, like you're sharing it with your children, like, we're not in control of all that. So now you've got an environment that is completely outside of the control of your corporation that could have a whole host of new problems that you haven't considered. So the best solution, in my opinion, most of the time, is to have a corporate issued device and to say, if you want to do business, you do it on your business device. If you want to do personal stuff, you do it on your personal device. That having been said, there are ways to make personal devices work, but it's going to have some more overhead, more complexity. It's going to require the person who owns the device to allow you to install, corporate tools on that computer. And that's, not everybody's going to go for that, but there are ways to do it.
Yeah, so that gets kind of into something else that you were talking about, cell phones. You're working from home now. You don't have people calling you on the work line unless your voice over IP set up to at your house. But a lot of people are using their cell phones for work. What are the possible implications of doing that, or what are some things that need to be considered if somebody is using their cell phone for business?
Very similar to, using their home computer. Again, who's controlling that device? The problem I see with mobile device management, that's what it's called, is that a lot of corporations aren't doing mobile device management to begin with. They don't have corporate issued devices. And as part of their bring your own device agreement, they're not requiring their employees to allow them to install something like a Microsoft Intune, or some of the other providers like Verizon and some other folks. They have their own mobile device management suite that you can also install. They're not requiring that. And so they're already starting from a position of, not having control over that device and its access and its security. So that's something you need to look at, is mobile device management, whether or not you're working from home. If you're allowing your employees to use their personal device to access corporate data, again, you are introducing a whole host of other risks and concerns. I don't know if espionage is a concern for you in particular, but if it is, there are some businesses where that's a big, huge concern, is that somebody is going to steal intellectual property or client lists or whatever it is and send it to somebody else. What do you have in place to make sure that's not happening? Now, I want to say this. It's a pretty controversial topic, and it's a hotly debated one. There's a lot of people out there who say there's no way I'm ever going to let my employer have any kind of access to my personal device. And to those people, I say, that's fine. Like, yeah, I get it. But if you want to use a mobile device to access corporate resources, it's completely within the right of the company to require that device to be set up in a particular fashion and have a certain monitoring. So maybe the agreement there is, okay, yeah, no problem. We're not going to put anything on your computer, your phone, but you're also not going to be allowed to use it for work. And if you want to use it for work, you got to let us drop a mobile device management suite on there and then put some security in place. And I think the big concern is always like this big brother stuff. Like, my boss is going to watch what I'm doing on my cell phone. First off, most mobile device management suites don't allow you to do a lot of the things you're worried they would do. A lot of them say, hey, like Intune from Microsoft, when you install it, it tells you what it can and can't do. And one of the things that I'll tell you is, like, it's not going to check your browser history. It's not going to, track your location. It can if you set it up in a particular way, but the way maybe they're deploying it doesn't do that. And it'll tell you, these are the things it's going to do, it's not going to do. And those aren't, Microsoft's not lying when they say this is what the software does and doesn't do. Now, could it get hacked? Could it be exploited and be made to do other things? Possibly. But the truth is, for the most part, for most employers, first off, they don't want to look through your browser history, truthfully, trust me, unless they're, nobody I know wants to do that, right? They got work to do, but they're not going to have that capability anyways. So if that's the thing you're concerned about, though, which I guess for some people it might be a reasonable concern and a legitimate concern, then you have to find some alternative to that. Maybe the company does issue you a phone. Maybe they give you a reimbursement so you can get a secondary phone and it's your work only phone. But again, if you're allowing your employees to use mobile devices to access, corporate information, you've got to ask the question, are we able to guarantee that device is secure and set up in such a way that it's, almost impossible for it to be used by somebody other than the intended user? And if it's not, this is a big gap here in the way that you've got your network set up.
It wouldn't be a big surprise to see us kind of going back to those days where people used to have they look like a Western movie. They had the two holsters, their personal phone, and then they had their BlackBerry on the other side.
Yeah.
That was kind of like a status symbol back then, but now it's more of a nuisance. But we may see that again.
Having multiple
at least
devices.
we may not flinch,
right?
If we see that,
the little leather pouch, like the little setup holster thing. Yeah, maybe that's how you do it. You get two of them, but I don't mind. So with us, we do have mobile device management in place for the employees that are on call that get corporate issued phones or reimbursed phones. And then we just let them know, here's our policy. Here's what we will do, what we won't do. But it's really important to have some sort of plan there to at least think it through.
Yeah, this is definitely a topic that I know we could continue to delve into. There's so many things to think about. But it is, like you said, it's a hot topic though, right? It's something that people are thinking about because a lot of people are going remote. It's saving businesses money, and even more importantly, it's helping some places to stay safe. But it's not something that is as simple as just saying, "Hey, head home and do your work from there." It's something that businesses need to have a clear outline plan to do. Is that
absolutely? I mean,
am I on the right track?
Yeah, you really need to think it through. There's a lot more, and you should talk to your technologist about this, right? Your technology company or your employee, whoever it is that's helping you with your information technology. You should have this conversation with them and say, what is it you recommend we do? What are we not thinking of? A couple examples. You said, they're taking phone calls on their cell phones. Are they? Is that the plan? Is the plan that your employees are going to take company calls on their cell phones? Do you need soft phones installed on their laptops so they can use the software-based phone from their computer? Are they going to need headsets? But what's the plan here? What's the strategy? And you've got to consider security. You've got to consider intellectual property. You've got to consider, ownership, replacement. Like, how are you handling this whole new ecosystem? Before it was really simple, right? You had one computer on a desk and a phone next to it. That was it. Now you're going into the wild, wild west of bring your own device. How are you gonna secure that? So there's a lot to think about, and there's a lot to test, and you want to do it right. And if you're not careful, you're exposing your company to a lot of risk. You're exposing your customers' information, whatever information they've shared with you, you're now exposing that information to a lot of risk. And, companies, they need to take that more seriously. And it's a thing that I think a lot of people have, it's starting to come into the consciousness of most business owners now a little bit, but I think there's still a ton of folks that they're not thinking about the fact that they're collecting information on their customers and that the mistakes that they make or the lack of security that they implement doesn't just affect them. They could be giving up this client information to criminals and nefarious characters all over the internet. And so, here they need to take it seriously. Are they good stewards of their customers' data, or are they being careless with it? There's a lot they have to think about, and working remotely or going to people working from home only makes that more complicated.
That's a lot to take in. A lot of good points there. Appreciate that, Travis. And we may even delve deeper into that in a future podcast. But for now, to wrap things up, Travis, give us the XYZs. So your business is going remote. Did you think of?
Yeah. So this is the 30-second or less, right?
Yeah. I probably should have said that.
I don't know. So, in 30 seconds, if I can do it.
Okay. Well, let's try this. We'll give you 35 seconds this time. We'll give you an extra 5 seconds, to count it down. But so you're going remote, 30 to 35 seconds or less. Did you think of what?
Did you think of how you're going to handle phone calls? Did you think of how your employees are going to access corporate resources? Are they going to use their own computer? Are they going to use computers that you issue to them? Are they going to be laptops? you know, if you're going to let them use their own computer, how are you going to secure those computers? Do you need VPNs? Do you need remote desktop setup? Do you need do you need an RDP gateway? Do you need a VPN concentrator? It's just, how are you going to protect yourself, your information, and your customers' information while allowing this change to occur in your organization? And another thing is, have you talked to your information technology person? Have you sat down with them? Don't make these decisions on your own. Don't think you can figure it out and it's all going to work out. Sit down with them, talk to them, ask them what you need to think of you haven't thought of yet.